Good evening. Tonight, we're looking at a narrow strip of water that holds immense power over our daily lives. It's called the Strait of Hormuz. Picture a map of the Middle East, Persian Gulf, Gulf of Oman, the open ocean, Iran, United Arab Emirates, an exclave of Oman. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide, creating a natural bottleneck for one of the world's most critical resources. This strategic choke point is more than just a line on a map. It's the carotid artery of the global energy supply. Think of it as the world's busiest energy highway. Every single day, massive oil tankers navigate these crowded waters. Crude oil, liquefied natural gas, LNG, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, exports to Asia, exports to Europe, exports to North America. The volume of traffic and the value of the cargo make this arguably the most important strategic choke point on the planet. The reason this matters so much is its vulnerability, because it's so narrow and bordered by countries with a history of political tension, conflict, political instability, deliberate acts of aggression. The consequences would be felt almost instantly around the world. A shutdown for a day, a shutdown for a week, a shutdown for longer. To truly understand the strait's importance, we need to look at the staggering numbers. Every day, about 21 million barrels of crude oil and other petroleum liquids pass through this waterway. To put that in perspective, the entire world consumes about 100 million barrels of oil per day. This means that roughly 1/5 or 20% of the world's daily oil supply travels through this single narrow channel. Think of it as the world's busiest energy highway. It is a torrent of black gold, flowing non-stop to power industries, heat homes, fuel transportation on every continent. The sheer volume is almost difficult to comprehend, representing the lifeblood of modern industrial society. Beyond oil, the Strait of Hormuz is also a critical conduit for liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Qatar, one of the world's largest LNG exporters, ships almost all of its supply through this passage. In total, more than a quarter of the world's entire LNG trade navigates the strait. This is especially important for countries in Asia and Europe that rely heavily on natural gas for electricity and heating, particularly as they move away from coal. A disruption to LNG flows would not only create an energy crisis, but could also derail climate goals, as nations might be forced to turn back to more polluting alternatives. The infrastructure required to move this much energy is immense. The vessels that transit the strait are known as very large crude carriers, or VLCCs. Each one of these supertankers can carry around 2 million barrels of oil. On any given day, dozens of these massive ships are either entering, exiting, or waiting to pass through the strait. So, what would actually happen if the Strait of Hormuz were to shut down? The first and most immediate effect would be a dramatic spike in oil prices. With 20% of the world's supply suddenly taken off the market, panic would ensue. Traders would bid frantically for the remaining available oil, and the price per barrel could easily double or even triple in a matter of days. We saw a preview of this during past Middle East conflicts, but a full closure would be on a scale we have never experienced before. This isn't just a problem for big corporations, it translates directly to the price you pay at the pump. Gasoline prices would soar, making your daily commute or family road trip significantly more expensive. This initial price shock would quickly spread throughout the entire economy, a phenomenon economists call cost-push inflation. Higher fuel costs mean higher transportation costs for everything. Trucks, trains, ships deliver food to your grocery store, products to retail shelves, raw materials to factories. Companies would have no choice but to pass these costs on to consumers. As a result, the price of everyday goods, from a gallon of milk to a new smartphone, would rise. Your purchasing power would decrease, and the cost of living would climb for everyone, hitting lower-income families the hardest. The crisis would not stop at consumer goods. It would have a severe impact on jobs and industries. Airlines, which operate on thin profit margins, would be devastated by skyrocketing jet fuel prices, potentially leading to flight cancellations, route closures, and widespread layoffs. The shipping industry itself would be in chaos. With a significant portion of the global tanker fleet trapped or unable to load cargo, shipping rates for all goods would increase. Manufacturing industries that rely on petroleum products, such as plastics and chemicals, would face raw material shortages and rising costs, forcing them to scale back production and lay off workers, creating a domino effect of job losses across the economy. Ultimately, a prolonged shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz could trigger a global recession. The combination of high energy prices, rampant inflation, supply chain disruptions, and widespread job losses would create a perfect storm for economic contraction. Consumer confidence would plummet, leading people to save rather than spend, further slowing down the economy. Stock markets around the world would likely crash as investors panic about corporate earnings and economic instability. What starts as a localized conflict in a narrow strait of water would quickly become a full-blown global economic crisis, demonstrating just how interconnected and fragile our world has become. While a closure of the Strait of Hormuz would affect the entire world, some nations would be hit much harder and faster than others. The countries most dependent on the strait fall into two categories: producers inside the Persian Gulf who need to export their energy and consumers who desperately need to import it. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar. A shutdown would be catastrophic for their national budgets. Their economies are overwhelmingly reliant on oil and gas revenues. A blockade would choke off their primary income, potentially leading to severe domestic economic distress and social unrest. On the other side are major importing countries, particularly in Asia: China, Japan, South Korea, India. Japan imports around 90% of its crude oil from the Middle East. Given the immense risks, preventing a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz is a top priority for the international community. The most immediate and crucial strategy is diplomacy and de-escalation. Tensions in the Persian Gulf often stem from deep-seated political rivalries, particularly between Iran and its neighbors and with Western powers. Fostering open channels of communication, encouraging regional dialogue, working toward diplomatic resolutions to disputes are essential. International agreements, like the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, attempted to reduce regional tensions by trading economic relief for security assurances. Reviving and strengthening such diplomatic frameworks is critical to avoiding miscalculations that could lead to conflict. Another key strategy is the diversification of energy supplies and transit routes. For years, producer countries have been exploring ways to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. Expanding this pipeline capacity is a concrete step that would provide a crucial alternative if the strait were ever blocked. These pipelines cannot replace the massive volume moved by tankers, but they can act as a vital safety valve during a crisis. For consuming nations, the long-term solution lies in reducing their overall dependence on fossil fuels imported from this volatile region. By investing in solar, wind, and other clean energy technologies, countries can reduce their vulnerability to oil price shocks. This energy transition serves as a powerful national security strategy. Ultimately, ensuring stability requires a collective effort.